You've been lied to. They told you to move faster, grind harder, wake up earlier, sleep less, hustle more. That if you're not running, you're falling behind. That slowing down means you're weak, lazy, or unambitious. But let me ask you something real. What if slow is the new strong? What if stillness is your superpower? What if the people who master their pace win the race? Because here's the truth, chaos doesn't mean progress. Speed doesn't mean direction. And burning out is not a badge of honor. It's a warning sign. They told you to chase speed like it was success. That if you weren't always on the go, always doing, always achieving, then you were falling behind. That if you stopped, even for a second, you'd be overtaken, forgotten, replaced. So you ran. You ran faster, harder, longer, until your body felt exhausted and your mind couldn't breathe. But let me tell you something real. The people who move with purpose don't run blindly. They walk with force. They're not driven by panic, they're fueled by vision. And that's the difference between living to impress and living to impact. When you live slow but move strong, you don't react, you respond. You don't chase, you choose. And that power, that's the kind that can't be rushed. Living slow isn't about inactivity, it's about intentionality. It's about understanding that rushing doesn't always equal progress. You can be moving 100 miles an hour and still be going nowhere that matters. But when you slow down, when you pause to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I becoming in the process? That's when you unlock a deeper level of power. It's not about how fast you get there. It's about whether there is even where you were meant to go. Speed makes you impulsive, but slowness makes you deliberate. And when you're deliberate, you're dangerous. Because nothing about your actions is random. Every step is aligned. Every move is sharp. Every decision is yours, not the world's. We live in a culture obsessed with pace. Fast food, fast fashion, fast money. And yet everyone is tired. Everyone is chasing something they can't define. The finish line keeps moving, and no one stops to ask why. You start to believe that urgency is value, that the louder you are, the more important you must be. But real strength, it doesn't scream, it doesn't rush. It stands tall in the middle of chaos and says, I know who I am. Because the truth is, strength is not in the volume of your voice. It's in the depth of your presence. It's how you carry yourself when you're not being watched. It's how you move when you're not being applauded. When you live slow, you give yourself space to think, to breathe, to reflect. That space isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's where you find the answers that rushing could never give you. And it's in that clarity where your real power begins to form. The world tells you to keep grinding, but sometimes grinding just wears you down. What you need is not more speed, it's more stillness. You don't need to keep up, you need to rise up. And rising isn't about how fast you ascend, it's about how rooted you are while you do it. Because if you're not grounded, even success will shake you. There's a fire that burns stronger in people who aren't afraid to move slowly. Because they've learned that consistency beats intensity. That discipline is more powerful than adrenaline. They don't need external validation. They've already built their foundation within. They're not looking to win the race in record time. They're building something that lasts long after the crowd stops clapping. That's what makes them strong. Not the rush, not the noise, but the calm control in their decisions, the fierce clarity in their steps. They don't waste energy proving, they conserve it for building. And while the rest of the world burns out chasing trends, they rise with unshakable purpose. You see, when you stop performing for speed, you start performing for legacy. You don't care about temporary applause. You care about timeless impact. You don't measure success by how much you've done. You measure it by how deeply it's rooted in truth. That's what happens when you live slow but move strong. You become less about momentum and more about meaning. You don't panic when others rush ahead because you know what they don't. Direction matters more than speed. And when your direction is rooted in self-awareness, in discipline, in vision, nothing and no one can shake you off course. We live in a world that glorifies being busy, where your worth is measured by how full your calendar looks, how many emails you respond to before sunrise, how little sleep you can function on. Grind now, rest later. That's what they say. But here's the problem: later never comes. The people who move at the speed of burnout don't get ahead. They break down. They get caught in a cycle of doing more while becoming less. More exhausted. More disconnected. More fragile. And all for what? A version of success that looks impressive on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. When you stop chasing speed and start honoring focus, your energy stops scattering. Your results start multiplying. Because doing more isn't the same as doing what matters. Focus is a discipline. In a world addicted to distractions, it's revolutionary. Anyone can sprint toward the next thing, but it takes real courage to stay with one thing long enough to master it. The truth is, speed makes you superficial. You skim, you glance, you half finish. You keep moving to avoid sitting with the discomfort of depth. But focus forces you to confront, to commit, to sharpen. It slows you down so you can go deeper. And depth is where transformation happens. You don't need to chase every opportunity. You need to focus on the right one. You don't need to impress everyone. You need to impact the few who matter. That's the shift. From wide to deep, from fast to strong. You know what speed really does? It distracts you from your own brilliance. It keeps you chasing validation instead of alignment. Because when you're always on the move, you don't have time to listen to your own voice. You're too busy reacting to everyone else's. You say yes to things that don't fulfill you. You say no to rest, to reflection, to recalibration. And slowly, you start forgetting who you are without the chaos. That's the danger. You become a product of pressure, not a person of purpose. But when you choose focus over frenzy, you begin to hear yourself again. You remember your vision. You reconnect with your power. And in that stillness, your best ideas are born. Building something meaningful takes more than hustle. It takes intention. Fast decisions lead to shaky foundations. Quick wins rarely last. And when you're constantly rushing, you don't have the patience to build anything real. But when you slow down, when you commit to the process, you begin to construct something that's unshakable. You give your work time to evolve. You give your mind space to think. You give your life permission to breathe. That's when you stop surviving and start designing. Not just reacting to life as it comes, but creating a life that reflects your values. One move at a time. One bold, focused decision at a time. Consistency is the secret weapon no one wants to talk about. Because it's not flashy. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't scream for attention. But it works. And it wins. The people you admire didn't get there because they sprinted once. They got there because they showed up when no one was watching. They kept doing the boring, difficult, essential work over and over again. That's the kind of strength that speed can't buy. You don't need to be the fastest. You need to be the one who refuses to quit, who refines instead of rushes, who builds routines instead of chasing hacks. That's where real growth happens. Not in the frenzy of the start, but in the discipline of staying. The culture will always try to pull you toward more speed, more noise, more output. But real leaders, real creators, real warriors, they choose better, not more. They eliminate what doesn't serve their mission. They aren't seduced by urgency. They're anchored in clarity. That's what focus does. It gives you your power back. It says, I know what I'm here to do, and I'm not wasting my energy on anything less. And when you carry that kind of clarity, you become a force. You stop blending in with the blur, and you start moving with purpose. Every step is intentional. Every action is aligned. You don't need to rush to prove you're capable. Your consistency proves it for you. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Stillness is mistaken for weakness. In a world where everyone's shouting to be seen, where opinions fly faster than thoughts, and volume is confused with value, it takes a different kind of power to be quiet, to hold your voice until it matters, to sit in the stillness and listen, not just to others, but to yourself. That silence isn't empty. It's intelligent. It's the space where ideas form, where intentions sharpen, where emotional noise clears and truth begins to echo. When you choose silence over reaction, you choose wisdom over ego. You stop performing for approval and start preparing for impact. Because real power doesn't need to announce itself. It walks in grounded, present, ready. Most people move so fast that they never stop to ask, is this even what I want? They chase goals they inherited, expectations they never questioned, dreams that don't even feel like theirs anymore. And because they're moving so quickly, they never pause long enough to notice the disconnect. That's what stillness reveals. The misalignment, the burnout, the pressure they've mistaken for passion. But when you slow down, when you sit in the discomfort of silence, the fog starts to lift. You see things clearly. What used to feel urgent now feels unnecessary. What once seemed impossible starts to look inevitable, because silence gives your mind time to reset, to recalibrate. And in that recalibration, you stop chasing the life you think you should live and start creating the one you were meant for. People think being strong means dominating every room, leading every conversation, being the loudest, the boldest, the most intense. But real strength isn't in how loud you are, it's in how still you can be. Can you keep your power when no one is watching? Can you stay rooted when everything around you feels chaotic? That's real strength. The ability to observe without reacting, to feel pressure without collapsing, to stay in your lane even when the noise tries to pull you in every direction. It's not passive, it's potent. The strongest people don't flex, they hold steady. They don't panic, they plan. They don't chase, they attract. Because they've learned that groundedness is magnetic. Stillness also protects you from the trap of overreaction. When you're constantly in motion, constantly engaging, constantly reacting to every headline, every opinion, every challenge, you lose control of your narrative. You become a puppet of the moment. But when you embrace stillness, you gain control. You create space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies your greatest freedom. The freedom to choose your next move with clarity, not out of fear, not out of insecurity, but from a place of strength and strategy. That's how you rise, not by reacting to every wave, but by learning how to surf the tide with precision and poise. Silence is not disconnection. It's deep connection. It's how you tune in to your instincts, how you remember who you are underneath the noise. In silence, you access the part of you that knows what you're capable of, that knows when to move, when to wait, when to speak, when to hold back. That kind of knowing isn't taught, it's remembered. And you only remember it when you're brave enough to step away from the distractions, to detach from the performance, to stop needing every moment to be filled with sound. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Just let your energy speak. Let your presence do the talking. Let your stillness be the storm they never saw coming. There's a difference between stillness and stagnation, and the world gets it twisted. Stagnation is stuck energy. It's passivity. It's avoidance. But stillness is the opposite. Stillness is charged with intention. It's a decision to pause with purpose, to observe with clarity, to conserve your energy for what truly matters. Stillness is strength under control. It's self-trust in motionless form. When you live in stillness, you're not doing nothing. You're preparing, sharpening, rooting. So when it's time to move, you don't just react. You strike with precision. And that kind of movement, that kind of calculated, powerful movement, it's unstoppable. Everyone is chasing the next milestone, next title, next promotion, next applause. Life has turned into a race, a constant sprint toward an invisible finish line. But here's the truth they don't tell you: there is no finish line. There is no final destination where you suddenly feel fulfilled, complete, enough. And the more you treat life like a race, the more you miss the actual living. When you're too focused on arriving, you forget to notice where you are. You skip over the beauty in the in between moments. You sacrifice your peace for pace. And in the end, all you have is a list of achievements with no memories attached. You can win the race and still lose yourself. That's why living slow isn't a weakness. It's a decision to stop rushing through the masterpiece you were meant to experience. There's depth in the details, the smallest conversations, the quiet mornings, the slow sips of coffee, the way sunlight moves across your floor. These are not distractions from success. These are the ingredients of a life well lived. But when you're always rushing, you miss them. You start viewing life as a checklist instead of a canvas. You're always trying to get through something instead of being in it. And when you treat every moment like a means to an end, you rob it of its meaning. Living slow brings you back to those details. It teaches you to stop skimming and start feeling, to stop pushing and start appreciating. Because the richness of life is not in how fast you go, it's in how deeply you notice. People will tell you to move faster so you don't get left behind. But left behind from what? From a version of success that exhausts you, from expectations you never chose. What if slowing down is the very thing that propels you forward? Not in the way society defines success, but in the way your soul defines peace. When you live slow, you get to redefine what matters. You realize that success isn't measured in trophies. It's measured in alignment, in how you feel when you wake up, in how much of your life feels like your own. You stop comparing yourself to timelines that were never built for you. You stop chasing life like a prize and start building life like a masterpiece. The pace of your life determines the depth of your presence. And presence is power. It's the ability to be fully here, fully grounded, fully connected to the moment you're living in. Not just floating through it on autopilot. When you're present, you're not easily shaken. You're not constantly reacting to every little disruption, every external pressure. You're anchored. And that kind of presence can't exist in chaos. It requires intention. It requires slowness. It requires choosing to be where your feet are instead of mentally sprinting toward what's next. When you live like that, anchored, attentive, aware, your life stops feeling like a blur. It becomes vivid, whole yours. Slowing down allows you to see your growth. When you're always rushing, you miss the evidence that you're evolving. You miss how far you've come because you're too busy looking at how far there is to go. But growth isn't always loud. It's not always about dramatic breakthroughs. Sometimes it's in the way you breathe deeper, the way you speak softer but stronger, the way you no longer tolerate what drains you. When you slow down, you begin to see those shifts. You begin to honor them. And in doing so, you fuel even more transformation, not from a place of panic, but from grounded confidence. That's real growth, the kind that doesn't scream for validation, but speaks in the language of quiet power. Living slow allows you to move through life with intention, rather than compulsion. You stop being pushed by anxiety and start being pulled by purpose. You become selective with your time, your energy, your words. You stop giving attention to things that drain you just because they're urgent. You stop living for the weekend or the next break. Your entire life starts to feel like something you are in, not something you're constantly trying to escape. You become the kind of person who doesn't just react. You choose. You don't just move, you move with meaning. And that kind of living, that's not falling behind. That's finally catching up to yourself. Everyone talks about chasing power, like it's something outside of you. Like it's a job title, a follower count, a bank balance. But your real power isn't in what you accumulate. It's in how you move. In the energy you carry. In the choices you make when no one's watching. Power isn't loud. It's not about proving or performing. It's about pacing yourself with so much conviction, so much clarity, that the world begins to move around you instead of pulling you along with it. You don't rush because you're not desperate. You don't panic because you're not lost. You trust your timing. You trust your rhythm. And when you do that, you become untouchable, not because you're faster, but because you're anchored. When you choose your own pace, you stop being controlled by external noise, the pressure to compete, the illusion of urgency, the fear of missing out. All of it begins to lose its grip on you. Because now, you're not running to catch up, you're moving in alignment. You begin to realize that half of what you were chasing wasn't even yours to begin with. It was noise disguised as necessity. Expectations disguised as ambition. But when you slow down, when you get clear on your own pace, you gain power over your decisions. You know when to say yes. You know when to say no. And that clarity, that's a superpower. You're no longer pulled by the currents of other people's chaos. You become the calm in your own storm. People assume moving slow means you're not ambitious, that you're playing it safe. But let me tell you, it takes more strength to move deliberately than it does to sprint blindly. Anyone can run. Not everyone can wait. It takes discipline to hold your ground, to stay focused, to resist the pressure to rush when everyone else is speeding toward burnout. Moving strong doesn't mean doing more. It means doing what matters with relentless focus. It means choosing quality over quantity, depth over display, long-term impact over short-term attention. That's what powerful people understand. It's not about how fast you rise. It's about how solid you stand when you get there. Owning your power means rewriting the rules. You stop playing by timelines that never considered your story. You stop measuring success by someone else's yardstick. You stop apologizing for not fitting into a pace that was never built for your purpose. That's the beauty of moving strong. You reclaim your narrative. You set your own rhythm. You no longer live on autopilot. Every action is intentional. Every choice is rooted. You're not driven by fear. You're driven by vision. And because of that, you're no longer a passive participant in your own life. You become the architect. You build from the ground up, on your own terms, in your own time. There's a boldness in moving with intention that speed can't replicate. You don't need to announce yourself. You let your presence speak. You don't beg for recognition. You become undeniable. When you walk into a room, you carry weight, not because you're the loudest, but because you're the most centered. That kind of strength doesn't come from rushing. It comes from mastering your own energy, protecting your peace, aligning your habits with your values. You stop needing applause because you've already validated yourself. You don't chase attention. You attract it, naturally, quietly, powerfully. And that kind of magnetism, it only comes from moving with purpose, not panic. The truth is, when you move at your own pace, you move with more power than you ever thought possible. You stop burning out for things that don't feed your soul. You stop sprinting for things that won't sustain you. And instead, you start showing up for yourself. Fully, deeply, relentlessly. That's what moving strong looks like. It's not always glamorous. It's not always noticed. But it's a real. And real power doesn't beg to be seen. It builds in silence and shows up unshakable. You don't have to keep up with anyone. You don't have to explain your pace. You just have to trust that the strongest force in your life is you. So let the world keep racing. Let them rush, burn out, and spin in circles chasing things they don't even understand. But you move differently now. You've chosen stillness over noise, depth over distraction, power over panic. You've learned that speed without direction is just chaos dressed as ambition. And now, you don't just exist. You lead. You don't chase moments. You create meaning. This isn't about falling behind. It's about rising on your own terms. It's about living slow, but moving strong, unshaken, unbothered, unstoppable. Because once you own your pace, you own your life. And when you own your life, nothing can pull you off course. The race was never yours to run. The masterpiece was always yours to build. So walk forward, not fast, but fierce. That is how you win.